Ashley Byers was just 24 years old when she met 54-year-old Doug Benefield. Doug was a widower who lost his wife Renee 9 months before he met Ashley. But in just 13 days, Doug was no longer single, and Ashley's last name was no longer Byers. It was now Ashley Benefield. Together, the couple lived in Charleston. Ashley was a former ballerina, and she wanted to start a ballet company. Together with Doug, they launched a ballet company featuring dancers who didn't fit the prototypical ballet dancer profile. But as they were starting this expensive venture, Ashley got pregnant. She then moved to Florida to be with her mother. From that point forward, the ballet company imploded and their relationship became very strained. Ashley accused Doug of stalking her, and Doug accused Ashley of preventing him from seeing his child. This battle was fought inside of family court, and each time Ashley lost. Then the judge ordered psychological evaluations of Ashley and Doug. The results of those evaluations were going to be revealed in court, but just a few days before that hearing, Ashley shot and killed Doug. She claimed self-defense, but the prosecution says it was murder. Tonight we are live from the courthouse in Manatee County, Florida for day 3 of the Black Swan murder trial. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you with us. We're in the midst of another murder trial here. This all coming on the heels of the case involving Karen Reed up in Massachusetts. I know all of you very invested in that case, and that was a case that was a 3-month murder trial for Karen Reed. Not 1 month, not 2 months, but a 3-month murder trial for Karen Reed. This case, though, a little different. Got most of the evidence in, not in 3 months, but in 3 days. So here we are in a case that is moving at a rapid speed. Now, the question is for prosecutors, will this lead to a speedy conviction? And it's amazing when you think about it. The charges are the same. It's murder. Karen Reed was accused of running her boyfriend over with a car. And on the other hand, you had Ashley Benefield, who's accused of shooting her estranged husband. Both serious charges, both murder cases, but completely different tempos to these cases. One's in Massachusetts, one's in Florida. That accounts for part of the difference here. So as prosecutors attempt to move forward in this case to a speedy conviction, the defense is looking for a quick acquittal. One or the other, unless we get deadlocked again, will happen in this case. But let's find out where we are. Joining us tonight from Bradenton, Florida, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who's been covering this case from the beginning. Kelly, great to see you. Where are we right now in this case?
Hi there, Vinny. Well, the state has rested, so that was the big news today. They had said earlier in the week that they did expect to rest sometime this week. They thought they would do so around lunchtime today. There were some issues earlier in this morning that delayed proceedings a little bit, but then they ended up resting later on this afternoon. And then after they rested, defense counsel made a motion for a judgment of acquittal. So arguments took place from both the state as well as defense counsel, and the judge ended up denying that judgment, that motion for a judgment of acquittal. So then that means tomorrow, Vinny, defense counsel will begin presenting its case.
Yeah, and you know, there's always that big question looming as soon as that happens, the question that we always want to know, will she or won't she, should she or shouldn't she? We will find out if she's going to take the stand. But today, what I thought was really interesting is we got sort of a snapshot into this relationship between Ashley and Doug Benefield through some text messages that were shown in court.
Absolutely, we did. And it's funny, we cover so many cases, you usually get some juicy text messages. Not so much in this situation. Really, they were doing a lot of exchanging of pleasantries. Good night, good morning. Doug Benefield was sending Ashley Bible verses, and then she would just love the image, you know, put the little heart, send that back. So several Bible verses, pleasantries, talking about court proceedings, and then this move that was going to be taking place. So he was telling her that he was going to go to Lowe's and get moving boxes. And then the testimony was about this this was from the sergeant who did the cell phone extractions. Really just, he talked about the last exchange, the text message exchange between Doug and Ashley. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
Now, when he says, "I'm here out front," and she responds, "Okay, 1 minute," about what time is that during the day?
That's about 3:54 in the afternoon.
Okay, and the next message, is it about what time?
3:55 in the afternoon.
And the next after that?
After that, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
So there's an hour and several minutes in between these two?
Correct.
Okay, so after "okay, 1 minute," what is said?
Then 2:59, about to head back from Doug, and then the message after that appears to be an attachment at 5:11 in the afternoon. Appears to be maybe the U-Haul truck that they're loading up.
Okay. And that was sent from Doug?
That was 5:11. Yeah, that was incoming, yes, from Doug to Ashley.
Okay, and then the next message?
The next is from Doug, and this is number 261. Everything in except couch and 10 medium boxes and tutu cab, LOL. 262, she laughed at the image. 263, she responds, ha, OMG. 264, he responds with trucker on the way, and that's at 5:32 p.m.
At 5:32 p.m., was that the last communication between these two?
I believe so, yes.
So, Vinny, nothing really groundbreaking or that thrilling about the text message exchanges between the two of them. The state really just wanting to establish that, this was the last text message exchange between both Doug and Ashley.
And it paints a picture. Things seem very normal, very cordial. He's rented this U-Haul. He's packed up his stuff, I guess, first, and then he's driving over there, trucker on the way, that's him, to go pack up stuff at their house. It's not like a prelude to a murder here. There's nothing unusual about it. I get why prosecutors want to put this in front of the jury. Another witness today that I thought was extremely important in significance here, since there is only one person alive who was there at the time of the shooting. You try to get some sense of what happened there, and I guess the best that the state can do is bring in the medical examiner to talk about the wounds and the trajectories of the bullets.
Vinny, this is Dr. Vega, so the medical examiner who took the stand today. And the state's theory, what the state has talked about in this case, is that the bullet was it went from side to side, the right side to the left side. Now, defense counsel is saying that no, it went into the chest from the front, and then maybe even if it was a little bit off to the side, still it was from the front. So what he's saying, defense counsel, is that the pistol was facing right at the front, his chest, the chest of Doug's. And he did get the medical examiner on the stand to say, yes, that pistol would have been pointed toward the front of the chest. Why don't we go ahead and listen to some of that testimony?
Did you find injuries on the outside of his body?
I did, yes.
And where were they? And we'll talk about them in detail, but generally, where were they?
There was an injury to the right side of his chest, there was an injury to his right shoulder, and there was an injury to his right leg.
And did he have any injuries to his face or head?
No. Well, he did have to his head, yes, I'm sorry, not his face.
Okay. And what type of injury was that?
The injury to his head was what we would typically call in medical terminology, we'd call an abraded contusion. That's a swollen and scraped bruise. And it was on the very back of his scalp at what we'd call the occipital protuberance, or the lump at the very back of the head.
And what would that type of injury be consistent with?
Typically, it's from falling backward and striking the head.
So, Vinny, that's really where the difference is coming in between the state's theory and defense counsel. Again, you heard the medical examiner talking about it, saying to the right side of the chest. Defense counsel saying, yes, pointed at the chest, where the state is saying, no, Doug was turned away and it went to the side. So kind of saying that he was running away. There's no way that he was going after Ashley.
That's the only evidence so far that this jury has about what could have potentially been happening there. because Ashley Benefield hasn't testified yet. If she does, she'll give her version of it. We heard it from her attorney, but that's not evidence in the case. So this is extremely important. Okay, there was a little jury drama today. Can you explain what happened this morning?
I sure can. So this morning things got delayed a little bit because an attorney sent a letter to the court saying that they represent someone, a particular person. And so what was going on here is someone had noticed a juror at a restaurant, and at that particular restaurant, there was a news program on in which the proceedings of the court were being addressed, and this particular juror was there. So what happened is defense counsel then wanted all the jurors to be polled as to their media consumption. Let's take a listen to that.
Judge, I would suggest respectfully all the jurors, and I think...
Even though the letter says it was a male juror?
Yes, because that's what this anonymous source said. But I think to be safe, to the extent there was some jurors in this location, there's limited places to go for lunch around here, Judge, so I think there's potential that there could have been other jurors there as well.
I'll bring them in individually to ask about that.
So, Vinny, the judge went ahead and polled all the jurors. One after one said, no, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. Then we finally got to the person who said that was me. And that person ended up saying that, yes, noticed something that was on. It made him feel uncomfortable. He ended up taking his lunch to go and just ate it outside the courthouse. And so that was about the end of that. Polled the jurors. Nothing really ended up happening. Got that situation cleared up. And then the court proceedings officially began.
Yeah, every time there's a little bit of drama, I get very worried that things could be happening. But it seems like you're just going to pick up your lunch. The place you pick up your lunch got a TV on. Yeah, they're talking about it. I don't want to see that. I'll get that to go. And so much ado about nothing, hopefully. Kelly Craft at the courthouse tomorrow could be a big day.
I'm sorry. There's a big accident just right in front of us. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'll let you go. Make sure everybody's all right. Call 911 if you can.
Okay.
Wow, right there. Whew. Let's take a deep breath. Joining us now, Doug Benefield's cousin and the Benefield family spokesperson, Tommy Benefield, is back with us. Tommy, great to see you tonight. I want to start here, though, because there was a moment today inside the courtroom that all of us noticed here. And it's when the medical examiner is talking about the autopsy. I want the folks at home to see it because I think we noticed you while this was happening. And let's take a look.
Can you kind of orient the jury as to what we're looking at in States 89?
Yes, this is the back of Mr. Benefield's body. He has been rolled up onto his left side. So what we're seeing here is his back, the head here. So this is the left shoulder. The right shoulder would be up here. This is the left side of his back, and it's this purple area right here that represents where the projectile was lodged under the skin and the tissue.
And Tommy, one of the reasons I want to put that on and ask you about it, because someone's dead. Like, this really happened. This isn't, you know, this isn't moot court. This is a real criminal court. Someone was shot and killed. It was your cousin, your close family member. Was this the first time that you saw those images?
No, sir. We first saw those at the Stand Your Ground hearing. There were more today than previously there. Let me just pause and say, Vinny, thanks again for giving us a chance to speak to what's going on in the courtroom from our family and in support of Doug. Very important stuff out of Dr. Vega today. As Kelly played or you played earlier, if anyone understands how the trajectory of this bullet went, there is no chance it came from the front of Doug's body. It came from the side. It came in an inch behind his nipple. It crossed through both lungs and lodged in the back, as we saw in that picture earlier today. It's disturbing to see. It's disturbing to know that Doug lived for an hour and 20 minutes after being shot through the chest from the right side to the back left side of his back by that bullet you're now showing. That plastic red part is part of the, what some people call a hollow point. That 45 caliber bullet is intended to disable, knock down someone very, very quickly, which is why it did not leave his body on the back left side of his body.
What did that trajectory tell you about what happened inside that room?
There's no question from the angle, and the only way it can go from the right side to the left side, that it was in the right side of the body, a little of an angle from the right nipple area to the back left side of his back. But the fact that the bullet or no part came out at all means there was no way that it went from front to back like Mr. Taylor is trying to contend. In the other bullet that hit Doug, it actually did go through his leg and come out. Very, very different trajectories, but the bullet and the first one probably that hit him knocked him down, which is probably how he ends up hitting the back of his head as he's knocked down.
It does tell a story. It does tell a story. You know, each night I've been asking you about Eva, Doug's daughter, and today she was brought back into the courtroom and questioned by the defense attorney. I want to show that moment and then show everyone what it was all about. Let's take a look.
You post on social media?
I do.
TikTok?
Yes.
Any others?
No.
Following your testimony here last Tuesday, did you make any posts?
I did.
Tell us how many?
3.
3. And tell us one at a time. Were all 3 of them on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening?
One was on Tuesday.
And when were the other 2?
Yesterday. I just testified, and y'all don't know what it's like to have to testify in your dad's murder trial and know that your crush is watching you back home on TV. That's nerve-wracking. Stage 3. Feeling good. Got our coffee. Fit check. What up? Fit check. Remember how I told y'all that I was nervous about my crush watching me on live TV? Well, I literally told y'all. No, but in all seriousness, I cannot talk a lot about the trial right now. I will when I am allowed to.
So tell me something, I don't know if everyone at home knows, but Eva is extremely prolific on social media, on TikTok. Hundreds of thousands of people follow her. From your perspective, is that part of, has that helped her get through all of this?
Yes, sir. She has been really, really supported by her speaking about losing her mother, then losing her father to this killing, to this murder. And she's spoken out, and many, many other people who've gone through that have reached out to her. I believe one of those that we saw today, 362,000 likes, hundreds and hundreds of comments, almost all supportive of her. And she's very, very careful about what she's doing. She has been trained in media work, and over the last 2 years since we started down this road, it was very clear that the judge wanted to be careful for what she was doing, but the judge did not see that anything that she said broke the rules of what she's doing. She's still being held under subpoena, that she may have to come back in and testify. And so we really support her getting her feelings out, how she feels, in particular that this was about her crush, seeing her on the TikTok videos.
Yeah, and I mean, this case has taken some time. I mean, from the time that Doug was shot to where we are, years have passed by. People's lives have to continue. She's a young girl when all this happened. She's growing up into a young woman now, doing very well for herself, building a life, building a business, and I'm glad that she's able to handle everything so well. Tommy Benefield, we'll be speaking again, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vinny, for your coverage of this and for all your team on site. David, Kelly, everybody that's been doing such great work to get all the video out, just tell the truth about what's going on in the courtroom.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Tommy. All right, folks, we have some breaking news. In the never-ending Scott Peterson case, the convicted double murderer, a California judge has granted the defense's request to test a piece of duct tape recovered from Laci Peterson's remains for DNA. The tape was recovered during Laci Peterson's autopsy in 2003. Peterson was convicted in 2004 of murdering his pregnant wife, Laci, and their unborn son, Connor. Earlier this year, the Los Angeles Innocence Project attorneys requested access to test evidence for DNA. Peterson has always maintained his innocence, and the jury maintains that he's guilty. The LA Innocence Project lawyers believe the evidence could clear him of the murder conviction. Peterson is hoping for a new trial. He's currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. And I remind you once again, their theory is that someone was burglarizing the house across the street. Laci was walking the dog. She saw the burglars, so they abducted her and then murdered her and then put her in San Francisco Bay, where coincidentally Scott Peterson went fishing that morning. Coming up next hour.
A pregnant teenager goes missing. Her family begins to search, and they track her down in the woods, a victim of homicide. Tonight, we investigate the death of Mia Campos and her unborn baby.
A former ballerina charged in the death of her husband.
Said that she attacked her and she shot him.
She's claiming that he is the aggressor in all of this.
I see a liar. I see a manipulator. She killed my dad.
Will the jury see her actions as self-defense?
Boy, did she have every reason to fear him.
Or murder?
The Black Swan murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Hard Choose today.
Item number 1 is listed as a message. It's an incoming message with an attachment, and appears there's no body to it. In other words, there's no actually text string. It's just the actual attachment itself.
And who is it from and who is it to?
It's from Doug to, I'm just going to say the name that's on the actual.
That's fine.
It says Ashley Christina.
Okay. And is this the attachment?
Yes.
Okay, and if you could just read for the record what that says.
It says, am I now trying to win the favor and approval of men or of God? Or am I seeking to please someone? If I were still trying to be popular with men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ.
Kelly Craft said it best. In a lot of these cases, we get these juicy text messages, right? Here, we're getting biblical verses. There's a couple different pictures that are being painted here by both sides, and the Ashley Benefield side is painting a picture that's much different than the picture you're looking at right now. She's talking about being a battered spouse, a battered wife, someone who was scared, was abused, and was trying to get away from this man. The problem is, when Sergeant Brian Quiles took the stand today, he was going through some text messages. And as he is showing these text messages and reading them for the jury, you're not getting that feeling. You're getting the feeling that everything seems pretty normal. You know, yeah, they're going through their legal dealings in the courthouse and in the courtroom, family court, but it seems like there's like this road to reconciliation going on, and they're getting along. My goodness, he's going over to her house with a moving van, with a U-Haul that he rented, to help pack up stuff, because they're all moving to Maryland, until he got shot. Let's take a listen as Sergeant Quiles reads and goes through some of those text messages.
These are the two cell phones that I had done examinations on, one of them belonging to Doug Benefield, the other one belonging to Ashley Benefield. The next message sent around the same time, 10:36 a.m. It's from Doug to Ashley Christina. It says good morning with a few emojis. Then the next message after that, there's appears to be an attachment, and that's at 11:43 from Doug to Ashley Christina.
And what is the message right after that? Oh, I just went too far. Right after the attachment, I'm sorry.
Right after the attachment?
Yes.
It would be number 6. It's a message at 9:20, 11:43 from Doug to Ashley, and it says run, baby, run with a few emojis.
Okay. And so now I'll just play the attachment.
Randy. Randy.
At 10:13, there's an incoming message, says from Doug, so perfect outside, looks like a sun emoji. Ashley responds with an action for those previous messages, which just repeats, and then writes, oh yay, we should do Selby today. He responds, oh yes, with multiple M's and yum. She responds with a few emojis. He emphasized the emojis and then adds, Stephanie just sent Faith joint dismissal of everything except injunction, which Faith has to do, just one pager, and also responds, what time thinking Selby? Ashley Christina responds with the action of liking it, and then says, maybe 1:30-ish, I'll text you when we're headed that way with a thumbs up. He responds, or Doug responds, okay, I can come pick you up too. Then adds more time with my baby. Then adds mediation tomorrow by Zoom 10:30 and be quick.
Theoretically, this is how you would want people who were splitting up to kind of, deal with one another so things are smoother for the child. Mom and dad, they may not be together, but they are getting along and, everything seems fine. But obviously it wasn't. She's saying something completely different here at this trial is happening than what we're reading in these text messages. So what does this all mean? Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy. Also joining us, criminal defense attorney and the lawyer who represented out in Arizona, Kirk Nurmi, and former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. All right, Eklund, is she playing games here, or is the game being played inside the courtroom? I'm trying to understand why everything seems nicey-nicey.
Oh,
but she shot him.
This is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. That's why I don't do divorces because of this. You know how, unfortunately, before someone takes their own life, there's that moment of zen, that moment of clarity, that moment of freakishness, happiness with their decision. That is what I felt with these text messages, but it's on both sides. I think both sides knew things were going to end tragically, and it's weird. I've never seen this before. Before, a healthy divorce is, cuss words and middle finger emojis. You know what I mean? And that you don't find peace during the process. You find that later on. So that is the scariest thing I've ever seen. Legally, that's frightening. I'm frightened.
Kirk, it seems to me like they're getting along, right? We've seen other cases where people are breaking up and, one person might get a little obsessed with the other one, and things get a little nasty at times. And then there's, moments of passion, then moments of hate. But these messages paint a picture of, we're working things out. And we know that he's loading up a U-Haul at his place, then going over to her place to load up her stuff because they're all going to Maryland.
Well, Vinny, I think what you're saying is backed by a lot of common sense, but domestic violence, abusing someone you love, really defies common sense, right? And so I think we cannot give that kind of weight into these messages, because what a lot of domestic violence experts will say, and I suspect we'll see Ms. Benefield call one, whether or not she is a victim of, or a perpetrator of domestic violence, they're going to tell you that there is that honeymoon phase, right? This idea where they're all getting along. That's what keeps the relationship going. That's what keeps the bond going. So in that regard, these messages, I think, are going to be characterized as something entirely consistent with a domestic violence relationship in that phase. So I don't think it's as dispositive as you might be asserting, Vinny.
Nima, your thoughts?
Well, Vinny, the former prosecutor in me thinks that she's a master manipulator and she shot an unarmed man. But this is a Florida case. Those juries are notoriously unpredictable, especially in a self-defense case. You can go back to Trayvon Martin. We covered the movie theater popcorn case where someone walked when a cell phone was thrown at him. A jury found self-defense here. And let's be honest with you, we have a young, attractive female defendant. They tend to do better. So I don't know if she's going to take the stand and testify. The conventional wisdom is that she has to, but I wouldn't bet my reputation on a guilty verdict here, even though I do think that she is guilty. There's no reasonable basis for deadly force here, in my opinion.
All right, think tank staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about the medical examiner. How important of a witness was that? And is that witness telling the story for the prosecution about what happened inside that bedroom?
If, hypothetically, Mr. Benefield were falling, would it make sense that his legs would flip up in the air enough for this path of travel? Does that make sense?
If this injury were sustained while he was falling,
Yes.
then the injury would be sustained while his body is changing its position and in motion. But regardless, at the time the weapon was fired, the muzzle of the weapon would still have to be, relatively speaking, below, to the left of, and behind the right leg in order to get this particular angle of path of travel.
Important testimony for prosecutors in this case from the medical examiner talking about trajectory, et cetera. The reason it's important is they have no witness to this shooting. There's one witness who's alive, the defendant. She may testify, and you know what she's going to say will not help prove the prosecutor's case. So they need to prove it in other ways. So the trajectory and these bullets and these injuries have to tell a story to this jury. And that's one thing that you hope your expert like this medical examiner can do for you. Trying to figure out, you know, who was standing where, how he was standing, which way he was facing, and what does it mean? And what will it mean for this jury? Let's take a listen to more of the testimony of Dr. Vega.
So the path of travel was one of entering the right side of the chest, striking the fifth rib on the right side, the right lung, the 10th vertebral body on the in the middle of the spine, then the left lung, the 10th rib, and then the soft tissues of the back until it stopped where it is. And that path then, if one were standing upright and straight, would be from the right side toward the left, from the front towards the back, and essentially horizontal. In other words, without angling upward or downward. And again, that's relative to a standing upright position.
Would that injury have been immediately fatal?
Probably not.
And would it have incapacitated, if you can say, incapacitated Mr. Benefield quickly?
I think it would have incapacitated him quickly. Whether or not it was immediate, I don't think one can predict.
And did you find any stippling associated with the gunshot wound to Mr. Benefield's leg?
I did not.
Did you find any with a wound associated with his chest?
I did not.
And what, if anything, does the absence of stippling tell you? Specifically, we'll talk about the leg first.
The absence it reflects the same principle in either injury, and what it means is that typically when the weapon was discharged, it was far enough away so that the unburned gunpowder fragments, which are ejected with the bullet, had a chance to lose velocity and fall away prior to striking the skin. In general, typically that means that the muzzle of the weapon was more than 3 feet away from the target or the skin in this case. I determined the cause of death to be a gunshot wound to the chest that caused perforation of the lung, or the lungs, both lungs, with hemothoraces. It's a fancy word for bleeding that occurs in the chest.
And did you determine the manner of death in this case?
I did.
And what was that?
I determined the manner of death to be homicide.
Let's bring back in our think tank, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, Neiman Romani with us. Kirk, what story do these injuries and these bullets tell you?
I think if we just look at it objectively, we look at this idea that she was more than 3 feet away, right? Dr. Vega tells us that, the absence of stippling. And the direction says maybe he's running away, turning away, what have you. And that's why it's very powerful evidence for the state, Vinny, because she can come in, that is not typically associated with the defensive posture. Ms. Benefield takes the stand and says, you know, he was attacking, what have you, then this evidence is going to stand in defiance of that. So that's why it's very huge. It's objective evidence. It's not subject to, you know, fabrication, what have you. Now, of course, the defense could put up some of their own medical experts to contradict that, as well as domestic violence experts. So that could be some of the battle that we're going to see when the defense case proceeds, presumably tomorrow.
Nima, the other part of this, now we haven't heard Ashley's tell her story, but her lawyer did and talked about Doug being in that room with the warrior pose. And that was the threat, the warrior pose. What are you hearing? What story is this type of evidence telling you?
Well, Vinny, the defense has done a good job of dirtying up our victim, and it started in their opening statement, right? They're talking about someone who had fired a gun off before, had reportedly punched a dog. I mean, no matter how you think about people, everyone loves dogs. And on the day in question, he reportedly came after her with a box and was yelling and insulting her. So, you know, obviously the prosecutions are going to argue that Doug was shot in the back. And like Kirk said, that's pretty dispositive in my opinion. We all know self-defense, right? What does it require? When you're talking about deadly force, you have to reasonably believe you're at imminent risk of death or serious bodily injury. Someone who's unarmed or armed with a box or even in a warrior pose, in my opinion, I would submit that that's not a reasonable basis to use deadly force. But if ultimately the victim is so unlikable because the defense does such a good job of presenting him as some sort of monster, then maybe, just maybe, they have a shot in this case.
Eklund, this is a case where one person has a gun. That's the defendant. She used the gun. Doug Benefield did not have a gun. He had himself, his hands, maybe a U-Haul box. What are your thoughts about self-defense in light of what the medical examiner is telling us here?
Well, by virtue of having the standard ground hearing, she's saying that she was in the room. She's also saying that I guess he was aware of the gun as well, right? Because we're trying to stand our ground. So when you're dealing with domestic violence, it would not be really hard to conclude that he probably was mocking her around that time. So if somebody's in a warrior pose, right, and we're stating that domestic violence is a possibility, he's probably mocking her, and she was probably very, very afraid. So the defense is, what I'm hearing is that the defense is saying that the reason why there's lack of evidence is not because of the defendant, but it was because of the alleged victim in this case. So we're trying to see, so I guess the story is, if she's standing her ground, the fear, just like how some officers, you know, have that fear that something's going to happen and they shoot people in the face, the fear that, hey, he may go back into, you know, domestic violence, the fear. Those text messages are saying like, hey, I'm gonna always get away with it. Like if she's arguing domestic violence, then I think that everything kind of falls in line with what happened.
Okay, we're out of time, but just give me a number, 0 to 10. Will she testify? 10 being yes, 0 being no chance. Eklund?
0.
Nima?
8.
Kirk?
9.
All right, thank you.